Admiral Kethvar stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the holographic display that showed the galaxy's spiral arms. Millions of stars twinkled in the projection, and he knew that most of them belonged to the Zephyrian hegemony. For 3,000 years, his people and their 11 allied species had ruled the galaxy with absolute power. The bridge around him hummed with quiet efficiency. His crew moved with practiced precision, their blue-scaled faces calm and confident. They had reason to be confident. The hegemony fleet numbered in the hundreds of thousands. Their weapons could crack planets. Their shields could stop anything the galaxy could throw at them. Kethvar touched a control, and the display zoomed in on a small section near the galaxy's edge. A yellow star appeared, surrounded by several planets. The third planet from the star glowed blue and green. Earth, he said, tasting the strange word. What do we know about this system? His science officer, a tall creature with 6 arms and silver skin, stepped forward. The planet is inhabited, Admiral. The species calls itself human. They are mammals, bipedal, primitive. They have only recently developed faster-than-light travel. How recently? 50 of their years, Admiral. They have established colonies on 7 worlds and 3 nearby systems. Their technology is basic, Kethvar almost smiled. Basic technology. He had seen this before. Young species discovered space travel and thought they could claim territory among the stars. They never learned until it was too late that the galaxy already had owners. Show me their ships, he commanded. The display changed. A human vessel appeared, rotating slowly. Kethvar studied its crude design. The hull was made of metal alloys that his people had stopped using centuries ago. Its weapons were simple kinetic projectiles and primitive nuclear devices. Its engines were fusion-powered, barely capable of reaching significant fractions of light speed. They build their ships like fortresses, the science officer noted. Heavy armor, multiple redundant systems. Inefficient, but sturdy. Compensation for primitive technology, Kethvar said dismissively. What about their military capabilities? They have no unified government, Admiral. Multiple nation-states, frequent conflicts among themselves. Their largest fleet numbers perhaps 200 vessels. Most are smaller than our escort ships. Kethvar did smile now. 200 ships. The hegemony could deploy 50,000 without straining their resources. This would not even qualify as a minor police action. Have they responded to our territorial claims? He asked. Another officer, this one reptilian with green scales, stepped forward. Yes, Admiral. We broadcast the standard ultimatum to all human colonies 3 days ago. We demanded immediate withdrawal from all systems beyond their homeworld and submission to hegemony authority. And? They refused, Admiral. The bridge fell silent. Kethvar turned slowly to face the communications officer. They refused? Yes, Admiral. The message came from something called the United Earth Space Command. They stated that humanity would not abandon their colonies and would not submit to alien rule. Kethvar felt a cold anger building in his chest. In 3,000 years, no species had ever refused the hegemony's first ultimatum. Some had tried to negotiate. Some had begged for more time. But none had simply said no. Did they give reasons for this? Defiance? The communications officer activated a recording. A human face appeared on the screen. Pink skin, brown hair, determined eyes. The creature spoke in its primitive language, but the universal translator converted the words. To the aliens who call themselves the Zephyrian hegemony, the human said, I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Space Command. We have received your ultimatum. We reject it completely. Humanity has fought too hard to reach the stars to surrender them now. If you want our colonies, you will have to take them by force, and we will make you pay for every world. The message ended. Kethvar stared at the empty screen, his mind struggling to process what he had heard. The primitive creature had actually threatened the hegemony. It had promised to make them pay. Admiral, his tactical officer said quietly, there is something else. The humans have been moving ships. Intelligence reports indicate they are concentrating their forces in the Kepler 442 system. How many ships? 1, Admiral. Kethvar blinked. 1 ship? Yes, Admiral. A new design. Our long-range sensors detected it 3 days ago. It appears to be larger than their previous vessels, but it is still alone. The bridge crew exchanged glances. 1 ship. The humans were sending 1 ship to face the might of the hegemony. Either they were completely insane, or they had something very special planned. Kethvar made his decision. Prepare a pacification fleet. 50 ships should be sufficient to demonstrate the consequences of defying us. Admiral, his science officer said carefully, regulations require a minimum of 100 ships for pacification of a space-capable species. The regulations were written for species that possess actual military capability, Kethvar replied. These humans have one ship facing 50 of ours. I suspect the engagement will be over before it properly begins. He paused, then added, However, I want this broadcast throughout the galaxy. Let every species see what happens when primitives attempt to challenge the natural order. Perhaps it will prevent future misunderstandings. The crew began preparations for departure. Ships were called in from patrol duties. Weapons were charged. Crews were briefed on the simple mission ahead. It would be a quick demonstration of hegemony power, nothing more. As his fleet assembled, Kethvar reviewed the intelligence reports on humanity one more time. They were a young species barely out of their home system. They had no allies, no advanced technology, no experience in galactic warfare. Their only notable characteristic seemed to be an unusual level of aggression for their size and technological development. But aggression meant nothing without the power to back it up. And power was something the hegemony possessed in overwhelming abundance. 3 days later, Kethvar's fleet jumped to hyperspace. 50 ships, each one capable of reducing a planet to rubble. The largest carried weapons that could punch through the core of a moon. The smallest could destroy any human ship in seconds. As they traveled toward the Kepler 442 system, Kethvar felt satisfied. This would be a brief, decisive action. The humans would see their single ship destroyed, their defiance crushed. They would surrender, accept vassal status, and serve the hegemony as countless other species had done. The galaxy would remain as it had always been, ordered, controlled, peaceful under hegemony rule. Admiral Kethvar had no way of knowing that he was about to encounter something the galaxy had never seen before. Something that would challenge every assumption the hegemony had about warfare, about technology, and about the limits of what was possible. Humanity was waiting in the Kepler 442 system, and they were about to teach the galaxy a lesson it would never forget. Captain Elena Rodriguez stood in the command center of the UES Thunder Soul, watching the stars through the main display. Around her, 200 of Earth's finest officers and crew members worked at their stations. The ship hummed with barely contained energy like a predator waiting to strike. The Thunder Soul was humanity's greatest achievement and their greatest gamble. 5 years in construction, it combined every breakthrough human science had made since first contact with alien technology. But more than that, it represented something new, a fusion of human intuition with artificial intelligence that created something, neither fully human nor fully machine. Captain, called Lieutenant Commander Park from the sensor station. Long-range sensors are picking up hyperspace signatures. Multiple contacts bearing 27 Mark IV. How many, Park? 50 ships, Captain. Definitely hegemony design. They're big ones. Elena nodded calmly. Intelligence had predicted this. The hegemony would send what they considered an overwhelming force to crush human resistance quickly. 50 ships against 1. In any rational military analysis, the Thunder Soul didn't stand a chance. But humans had never been particularly rational. Arya, Elena said, addressing the ship's AI. Status report. The ship's artificial intelligence responded immediately, its voice somehow managing to sound both electronic and warmly human. All systems operational, Captain. Quantum processors are running at full capacity. Weapon systems are charged and ready. The neural interface network is stable. The neural interface was what made the Thunder Soul unique. Every crew member wore a small device that connected their mind to the ship's AI. Not control, the humans remained in command, but true partnership. The AI could think with computer speed and precision, while humans provided creativity, intuition, and the ability to make impossible leaps of logic. Tactical analysis of incoming fleet? Elena asked. Hegemony standard formation, Arya replied. Heavy cruisers in the center, destroyers on the flanks, escort fighters spread in a defensive screen. Standard energy weapons, plasma cannons, particle beams, shield technology approximately 400 years more advanced than our base technology. Approximately. The Thunder Soul's upgrades have closed much of that gap, Captain. But we remain significantly outgunned in raw firepower. Elena smiled grimly. Raw firepower had never been humanity's strong point anyway. Time to intercept? 6 hours, 17 minutes at their current speed. Elena activated the ship-wide communication system. All hands, this is the captain. In 6 hours we will engage a hegemony fleet of 50 ships. They outnumber us 50-1. They outgun us by factors we don't want to calculate. Their shields are stronger, their weapons more advanced, their crews more experienced. She paused, looking around the command center at her crew. She saw no fear in their faces, only determination. But they have never fought humans before. They don't know what we're capable of when we're cornered. They don't understand what happens when you threaten our families, our colonies, our future among the stars. Today we're going to teach them. A cheer went up from the crew. Elena cut the communication and turned back to her officers. Commander Torres, take us into the asteroid belt. I want us positioned near the largest cluster. Aye, Captain. Using the asteroids for cover? Using them for ammunition, Elena replied. The Thundersoul moved deeper into the Kepler 442 system's asteroid belt. The ship's advanced sensors mapped every rock, every piece of ice, every speck of metal floating in the darkness. Area calculated trajectories, gravitational influences, and collision probabilities for thousands of objects simultaneously. Meanwhile, light years away, Admiral Kethvar reviewed the sensor data from his approaching fleet. The human ship had positioned itself in the asteroid belt, a defensive move, he assumed. Primitive species often tried to use natural obstacles to even the odds. Foolish, he muttered. Asteroids will provide no meaningful protection against our weapons. His tactical officer agreed. The asteroid belt will actually work in our favor, Admiral. It will limit their maneuverability while our weapons can easily clear any obstacles. The hegemony fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. Immediately their sensors locked onto the single human ship waiting in the asteroid field. The readings were puzzling. Admiral, the science officer reported, the human vessel is larger than their previous designs. Mass approximately 1 million tons. Energy readings are unusual. Unusual how? There are patterns in their energy output that don't match any known technology. And Admiral, the ship appears to be scanning us. Kethvar looked at the display showing the human vessel. It was indeed larger than the ships in their intelligence files. More angular, with strange protrusions and what looked like additional weapon ports, but still primitive compared to hegemony designs. One ship, he said aloud. What can one ship do against 50? On the Thundersoul, Elena watched the hegemony fleet arrange itself in a classic attack formation. They were confident, professional, following doctrine that had worked for 3,000 years. That was exactly what she had hoped for. Arya, are you ready? Neural links are stable, Captain. I can feel the crew's thoughts, their intentions. We are ready to become something new. Elena settled into her command chair and activated her neural interface. Immediately she felt the ship around her not as a vessel she commanded, but as an extension of her own body. She could sense every system, every weapon, every piece of equipment. More than that, she could feel the minds of her crew, their skills and knowledge flowing through the AI into a collective consciousness that was still distinctly human. The hegemony fleet began its approach, weapons charging. They came forward in perfect formation, expecting to overwhelm the single, human ship with coordinated firepower. They had no idea they were about to face something that had never existed before in the galaxy, a fusion of human creativity and artificial intelligence, backed by the desperate courage of a species fighting for its right to exist among the stars. All stations, prepare for engagement, Elena ordered. But the words came not just from her mouth, but through the neural network that connected every crew member to each other and to the ship itself. The Thundersoul waited in the asteroid field like a spider in its web, ready to show the galaxy what happened when you underestimated humanity. The first energy beams lanced across space like spears of light. Admiral Kethvar watched from his flagship as 20 of his ships opened fire simultaneously on the single human vessel hiding in the asteroid field. The concentrated firepower was enough to vaporize a small moon. The beams struck empty space. What? Kethvar leaned forward in his command chair. Where did it go? On his tactical display, the human ship had simply vanished from where it had been waiting. Then sensors picked it up again, 3,000 kilometers away, moving between the asteroids at impossible speed. How did it move so quickly? His tactical officer asked. Our sensors didn't detect any hyperspace signature. Before Kethvar could answer, something streaked out of the asteroid field toward his fleet. Not energy beams, solid projectiles moving at incredible velocity. The hegemony point defense systems engaged automatically, destroying most of the incoming objects, but 3 got through. The impacts were devastating. Kinetic energy converted to pure destruction, as tungsten rods traveling at significant fractions of light speed punched through shields and armor like they were paper. One of his destroyers simply ceased to exist, torn apart by forces that turned its hull into expanding plasma. Impossible, Kethvar breathed. Kinetic weapons cannot penetrate our shields at those velocities. But even as he spoke, more projectiles emerged from the asteroid field, not in straight lines like normal kinetic weapons, but in curved trajectories that used gravitational fields to accelerate and change direction. The human ship was using the asteroids themselves as a gravity assist system, turning simple rocks into guided missiles. Captain Elena Rodriguez felt the Thunder Soul move around her like a living thing. Through the neural interface, she could sense every asteroid in the belt, every gravitational field, every possible trajectory. Area calculated millions of possibilities per second, while her human intuition chose which ones to act upon. Target the flanking destroyers, she ordered, though the words were unnecessary. The AI already knew her intentions through the neural link. The Thunder Soul darted between asteroids, using their bulk to mask its position while launching kinetic projectiles from concealed positions. But these weren't ordinary kinetic weapons. Each projectile contained clusters of smaller projectiles, guided by microcomputers and designed to separate at the last moment to overwhelm point defenses. More hegemony ships died. Admiral, Kethavar's communications officer called out in panic. The human ship is broadcasting on all frequencies. What are they saying? It's not words, Admiral. It's music. Through the bridge, speakers came the sound of human music, driving rhythms, soaring melodies, the kind of music humans played when they went to war. But mixed with the music were other sounds: poetry, speeches, laughter, the voices of children singing. The full spectrum of human experience broadcast for all the galaxy to hear. Kethvar felt something he had never experienced before: uncertainty. This was not how space battles were fought. Ships engaged at long range with energy weapons, following predictable patterns based on physics and mathematics. They did not dance through asteroid fields like living creatures. They did not broadcast art during combat. They certainly did not turn asteroids into weapons. The Thunder Soul had moved to a new position, using the gravitational field of a large asteroid to slingshot around and attack from an unexpected angle. More kinetic projectiles streaked toward the hegemony fleet, but these were different. They exploded before impact, releasing clouds of metal particles that interfered with sensors and communications. Chaff, Kethvar's tactical officer reported. They're blinding our targeting systems. In the confusion, the Thunder Soul struck again. Nuclear mines deployed in precise patterns that created overlapping fields of destruction. 3 more hegemony ships vanished in balls of nuclear fire. How many ships have we lost? Kethvar demanded. 12, Admiral. 12 ships destroyed, 4 more heavily damaged. 12 ships, against 1 primitive human vessel. It was impossible, yet it was happening. Through the neural interface, Elena felt her crew's excitement and determination flowing like electricity through the ship's systems. Chief Engineer Park was routing power to the weapons with an efficiency that amazed even Arya. Lieutenant Torres was calculating trajectories that the AI had thought impossible. Dr. Kim was monitoring crew stress levels and feeding performance data back to the combat systems. Every human on the ship was contributing their expertise, their creativity, their sheer bloody-minded refusal to give up. An Arya was amplifying it all, turning human innovation into reality at the speed of thought. Arya, what's our status? Hull integrity at 87%. Weapon systems optimal. We have successfully eliminated 24% of the enemy fleet while remaining largely undetected. Elena smiled grimly. The hegemony was learning what humans meant when they said they would make their enemies pay for every world. Admiral Kethavar made a decision that went against 3,000 years of hegemony doctrine. All ships focus fire on the human vessel. Ignore the asteroids. I want overwhelming firepower concentrated on that ship. Admiral, that will put our own ships at risk from asteroid impacts. Do it. 50 ships, now reduced to 38, turned their weapons toward the Thunder Soul's last known position. Energy beams crisscrossed the asteroid field, turning rocks to vapor and filling space with superheated gas and debris. For a moment, it seemed like the human ship had finally been caught. Energy readings spiked as multiple beams struck something solid. Then the Thunder Soul emerged from the other side of the debris cloud, damaged, but still fighting. Its hull was scarred and blackened, but its weapons were still operational, and it was heading straight for the center of the hegemony formation. "Admiral," his tactical officer said in a voice tight with fear, "the human ship is on a collision course with the fleet. They're not turning away." Kethavar stared at the display in disbelief. The humans were going to ram his ships. They were going to sacrifice themselves to take down as many hegemony vessels as possible. It was insane. It was irrational. It was completely, utterly human. "All ships, evasive maneuvers," he ordered. "Do not let them get close." But the Thunder Soul was no longer moving like a ship. It was moving like something alive, something that could think and adapt faster than any crew could respond. It wove between energy beams, used debris as shields, and accelerated toward the heart of the hegemony fleet with the single-minded determination of a species that had evolved from persistence. Hunters. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you cornered humanity among the stars. The Thunder Soul plunged into the heart of the hegemony formation like a missile made of pure human will. Around Captain Elena Rodriguez, the command center shook as energy beams struck the ship's hull. Damage reports flooded in from every section, but she barely heard them. Through the neural interface, she was one with the ship, feeling every hit like a physical blow but refusing to stop. "Hull breach on decks 7 and 9, Chief Engineer Park reported. "We're venting atmosphere." "Seal those sections," Elena ordered, but her attention was focused on the tactical display. 36 hegemony ships surrounded them now, pouring devastating fire into the Thunder Soul from every direction. Any normal ship would have been destroyed in seconds, but the Thunder Soul wasn't normal. Arya's processing power, combined with the intuitive leaps of 200 human minds, created something unprecedented. The ship twisted and rolled through the enemy formation, its movement pattern so unpredictable that the hegemony crews couldn't track it effectively. When they thought it would go left, it went right. When they expected it to retreat, it charged forward. "Captain," Arya's voice carried a strange note, something almost like excitement. "I am detecting something unusual in the enemy communication patterns. They are afraid." Elena smiled grimly. Good. Fear was a weapon humans understood very well. The Thunder Soul's main guns fired, not at the enemy ships, but at the space between them. Nuclear warheads detonated in carefully calculated positions, creating electromagnetic pulses that interfered with hegemony sensors and communications. In the confusion, the ship's secondary weapons struck like vipers, guided missiles that separated into smart submunitions, each one seeking a different target. Admiral Kethavar watched in horror as 2 more of his ships died. The human vessel was inside his formation now, moving among his ships like a predator among prey. His crews were panicking, firing wildly, sometimes hitting their own vessels in their desperation to destroy the impossible human ship. "Admiral," his science officer called out. "The human ship, it's doing something to our communications." "What do you mean?" "They're broadcasting directly into our computer systems. Not just communications, they're interfacing with our ship AIs. On screens throughout the hegemony fleet, human faces appeared. But these weren't the crude recordings they had seen before. These were real-time communications, the Thunder Soul's AI somehow breaking through their most secure networks." Captain Rodriguez's face appeared on Kethavar's main screen. She was bloodied, her uniform torn, but her eyes burned with determination. "Admiral Kethavar," she said, somehow knowing his name, "I am Captain Elena Rodriguez of the United Earth Space Command. You came here to destroy us. You thought we were weak because our technology is primitive. You thought we would surrender because you outnumber us." Energy beams lanced past the Thunder Soul as it continued its deadly dance through the hegemony formation. Elena didn't even flinch. "You were wrong. We are not weak. We are human, and humans do not surrender." The transmission cut out, but the psychological impact was devastating. The human ship wasn't just fighting their vessels, it was fighting their minds, their assumptions, their 3,000-year-old certainty that they were the masters of the galaxy. Through the neural interface, Elena felt her crew's determination flowing like fire through the ship's systems. Lieutenant Commander Park had rerouted power from non-essential systems to give the weapons 20% more output. Dr. Kim had developed a new stimulant compound that was keeping the crew alert despite their injuries. Commander Torres had calculated an attack pattern that Arya claimed was mathematically impossible, but was working anyway. Humans didn't just fight with weapons and technology. They fought with their minds, their hearts, their absolute refusal to accept that anything was truly impossible. Arya, show me the enemy flagship. The display zoomed in on Kethvar's massive vessel. It was beautiful in its way. Graceful curves, elegant proportions, the product of a civilization that had perfected the art of war over millennia. It was also the most heavily defended ship in the galaxy. Analysis: shields at maximum strength, 12 layers of defensive barriers. Weapon systems include planetary siege-class particle beams. Armor composed of metamaterials we cannot penetrate with conventional weapons. Conventional weapons? Captain, I believe I understand your intention. It will require precise timing and faith in human intuition over mathematical certainty. Elena grinned, feeling the ship respond to her emotions through the neural link. Arya, when have humans ever chosen mathematical certainty over a crazy plan that might just work? The Thundersoul suddenly changed course, breaking away from the smaller ships and heading directly for the flagship. Behind them, the hegemony fleet scrambled to pursue, but they were too slow. The human ship had already built up too much momentum. Captain, Torres called out, we're taking massive damage. Hull integrity down to 40%. If we don't change course, Elena said simply. We never change course. Kethvar watched the human ship approach his flagship and felt something he had never experienced in 3 centuries of life. Genuine terror. The humans were going to ram him. They were going to sacrifice their ship and their lives to take him down with them. But as the Thundersoul closed the distance, something unexpected happened. Instead of ramming the flagship, it dove underneath it, so close that the two hulls almost touched. And in that moment of proximity, the Thundersoul deployed its final weapon, not nuclear devices or kinetic projectiles, but something far more dangerous to the hegemony's way of thinking. Information, Arya, in direct contact with the flagship's computer systems, began downloading everything, not just tactical data or technical specifications, but something far more valuable. The complete history of the Zephyrian hegemony. Every species they had conquered, every world they had claimed, every promise they had broken. And then, as the Thundersoul pulled away from the flagship, that information began broadcasting on every frequency in known space. What are they doing? Kethvar demanded. His communications officer's face was pale. Admiral, they're broadcasting our classified files. The conquest of the Altarian system, the forced relocation of the Centauri colonies, the sterilization of the vegan resistance worlds. For 3,000 years, the hegemony had maintained power through careful control of information. Subject species knew only what they were told. The galaxy believed the hegemony's version of history, that they brought peace and order to a chaotic universe. Now, for the first time, the galaxy was hearing the truth. Elena Rodriguez had done something no military force in galactic history had ever accomplished. She had wounded the hegemony not with weapons, but with their own secrets. The Thundersoul, damaged but still fighting, transmitted one final message to the fleeing hegemony fleet. This is only the beginning. Admiral Kethvar's flagship limped through hyperspace, one of only 5 ships that had escaped the massacre at Kepler 442. Behind them, 33 vessels of the once mighty hegemony fleet floated as debris among the asteroids. The human ship, the impossible, insane human ship, had destroyed them all. In his private quarters, Kethvar stared at the damage reports with eyes that no longer saw clearly. His hands shook as he read the numbers. 33 ships, thousands of crew members, an entire fleet destroyed by a single primitive vessel crewed by mammals who had barely learned to travel between stars. But the physical damage was nothing compared to what the humans had done to the hegemony's reputation. The classified files that the Thundersoul had stolen and broadcast were spreading across the galaxy like wildfire. Every species, every world, every individual with access to galactic communications was learning the truth about hegemony rule. The forced relocations, the destroyed worlds, the systematic suppression of technological development among subject species. 3,000 years of carefully constructed lies were crumbling in a matter of Hours a chime indicated an incoming priority message. Kethvar accepted the transmission, and the face of High Counselor Vexthai appeared on his screen. The ancient Zephyrian scaled features were rigid with fury. Admiral. Vexthai's voice was cold enough to freeze atmosphere. Explain to me how a single primitive ship destroyed an entire pacification fleet. Kethvar tried to find words that would make sense, but how could he explain what he had witnessed? High Counselor, the humans, they fight differently. Their ship moved in ways that our computers could not predict. Their weapons used principles we do not understand. And their crew? He paused, remembering the face of the human captain, Elena Rodriguez. She had looked at him through the communication screen with eyes that held no fear, no doubt, only absolute determination. Their crew seemed to think and act as one mind, as if the ship itself was alive. Impossible, Vexthai snapped. Ships are machines. Crews are individuals. You are making excuses for your failure. High Counselor, I submit my recordings for analysis. You will see that this was no ordinary engagement. The humans have developed something we have never encountered before. But even as he spoke, Kethvar knew the High Council would not understand. How could they? For 3 millennia, the hegemony had fought enemies who followed the same basic principles of warfare. Ships moved in predictable patterns. Crews operated within known psychological parameters. Technology followed established physical laws. The humans had somehow transcended all of those limitations. Furthermore, Vexthai continued, preliminary reports indicate that rebellion is already beginning in 17 subject systems. The information the humans broadcast is causing significant unrest. Kethvar nodded grimly. That was what truly terrified him about the human strategy. They had not just fought a battle, they had started a revolution. On Earth, Captain Elena Rodriguez stood in the medical bay of the Thunder Soul, receiving treatment for her injuries while Aria provided status reports. The ship had barely survived the engagement. Hull breaches on 12 decks, main engines operating at 60% capacity, weapon systems severely damaged, but they had survived. And more importantly, they had sent a message that would echo across the galaxy. Captain, Aria said, I am receiving communications from 17 different star systems. Species we have never encountered are requesting information about human technology and military capabilities. Elena smiled despite her exhaustion. Not military capabilities, Aria. They want to know how we did what everyone said was impossible. And how shall I respond? Tell them the truth. We did it because we're human. We did it because someone told us we couldn't. We did it because the alternative was surrender. And humans don't surrender. Through the neural interface, Elena could feel her crew's emotions, exhaustion, pain, but also pride and determination. They had faced impossible odds and emerged victorious. They had proved that humanity belonged among the stars, but more than that, they had proved that the galaxy's established order was not as permanent as everyone believed. Lieutenant Commander Park approached with a datapad. Captain, we're receiving requests for asylum from 3 different species. They want to join the human colonies. Asylum? They're fleeing hegemony territory. It seems our broadcast has convinced them that resistance is possible. Elena felt a weight settle on her shoulders. The Thunder Soul's victory had made humanity a symbol of resistance against the hegemony. Other species would look to them for leadership, for protection, for hope. Aria, open a channel to Earth Command. Admiral Sarah Chen's face appeared on the communication screen. Her expression was grim but proud. Captain Rodriguez, we've been monitoring the situation. The entire galaxy is talking about what you did at Kepler 442. Admiral, we need to discuss our next moves. The hegemony will respond to this and they won't underestimate us again. Agreed. But Elena, you need to understand what you've accomplished. For the first time in 3,000 years, the hegemony has been forced to retreat. You've given hope to species that had forgotten what freedom meant. Elena looked around the damaged bridge of the Thunder Soul. Her crew was already working to repair the systems, preparing for whatever came next. They were tired, injured, but unbroken. Admiral, I need to ask you something. The neural interface system, Aria and the crew working together, it gave us capabilities we never expected. But it also changed us. We became something more than just humans operating a machine. Are you concerned about the implications? I'm concerned about what happens when other people try to replicate it. The interface works because we trust each other completely, because we're willing to share our thoughts, our emotions, our fears. Not every crew can do that. Admiral Chen nodded slowly. We'll address those concerns. But right now we need to focus on the immediate situation. Intelligence reports indicate the hegemony is mobilizing a much larger fleet. They're calling it a cleansing action. Elena felt Arya's presence in her mind, calm and analytical. How large? 500 ships, Elena. They're not taking any chances this time. 500 ships. Elena felt her crew's emotions shift through the neural link. Not fear, but anticipation. They had faced impossible odds before. They would do it again. Admiral, will need allies. The species requesting asylum. Some of them have ships, technology, knowledge of hegemony tactics. You're proposing an alliance? I'm proposing something the galaxy has never seen before. A coalition of free species working together as equals. Not subjects serving a master, but partners fighting for their right to exist. Elena looked out at the stars through the Thunder Soul's damaged viewports. Somewhere out there, 500 hegemony ships were preparing to destroy humanity. But also out there were dozens of species who had heard humanity's message and decided that freedom was worth fighting for. The age of hegemony dominance was ending. The age of galactic democracy was about to begin, and it had all started with a single ship, crewed by humans who refused to accept that anything was truly impossible. The Thunder Soul limped toward home, carrying the hopes of an entire galaxy on its damaged hull. Behind them, the asteroid field of Kepler 442 glittered with the debris of 33 hegemony ships, a monument to the day humanity taught the galaxy that sometimes the underdog wins. The thunder had spoken. The galaxy had heard, and nothing would ever be the same.